There was a particular smell back in the 80s and the 90s that existed in arcades. It had a bouquet of stale snacks, body odor, and plastic that really just permeated the air right as you walked through its doors. It may sound like an odd mixture of aromas, but it was just the start of what would make our young hearts beat faster and faster with every dollar spent. The sounds were of course next. A cascade of quarters jingled into the hands of sweaty teenagers. The bells and alarming tones of the machines echoed throughout the whole entire room. It was truly a magical place to be, no matter at all what your age was. It was around 1978 when things really kicked off for arcades. Taito's Space Invaders proved to be what many consider to be the breaking point into the golden age of the coin-operated arcade market. It wouldn't be long after that you couldn't walk into a mall, movie theaters, pizza parlors, or even gas stations all around the United States and Japan and find machines awaiting your coins. From then, though, going on throughout into the 80s, it would be a huge boom of this golden age of gaming. Games like Space Invaders, Galaxian, Pac-Man, Battlezone, Defender, and other games like Buscanian and more were among just some of the forefathers of these early days. However, by 1981, the arcade video game industry was worth $8 billion. Now, that's $8 billion in 80s money. That's some serious Scrooge McDuck style coinage. For us, though, here at R24, it was the 90s when the arcade renaissance really took off. Arcades simply exploded to new heights in 1991 with the release of Street Fighter II. This gave birth to a whole new genre of gaming that defined millions across the world, all the way into the current age of gaming. You know this as the fighting game genre. Now, of course, for me personally, Adam Ronan, it wasn't until 1992 when Midway released Mortal Kombat onto the world that my life changed completely. Then again, in 1993, when Mortal Kombat 2 released, not only was my world changed again, but so was the entire industry, it seemed. My favorite memory of the arcades, there was a place in town where we grew up called Fun Unlimited, and this was an arcade that existed from 1993 to I think probably 1994. It was like just a short-lived. I was in 7th grade. But the thing about it wasn't run on quarters. You would pay $4 at the door, and then to get in, it was an entry fee, and all the arcades were on free play. Much like what exists now in Chicago with Galloping Ghost, where you pay $20 to get in, and you can just play to your heart's content. This is like the grandfather of that. And they had a Mortal Kombat 2 machine, which is where I spent, I would say 90% of my time grinding the game, and how I got so incredibly, monumentally good at the game was because I was able to spend hours and hours after school every day without dumping in quarters, and I just got super good. Anyway, they held a statewide tournament for Mortal Kombat 2 at this arcade, and there was the myth of this man named Wade. And I've told this story before, a lot of you probably heard it before. Wade was an unforgiving player of a man. He was probably, at this time, he was probably like 22, 23, long black hair, real scruffy, wore a black trench coat before kids started murdering each other, and it was like a weird thing to wear. And he was unstoppable at Mortal Kombat 2. People would they'd be like playing at the thing, and then you would just hear, oh, Wade's here, and like the fucking crowds would part like Moses and shit, and he would walk up to the machine and just get there and be there for hours at a time. Anyway, they had this tournament, and the day would go, brackets and stuff, and it came down to Wade had beaten everybody, and I whittled my way down to head-to-head for the grand prize to fight Wade. I knew I would lose, of course, because Wade was unstoppable. He was an older kid. I was in middle school. I was already intimidated by him and his greasy musk. But I gave it a good college try as Liu Kang. I remember it very well. And I fucking dominated Wade. Killed him completely. I just murdered him. It was the most amazing moment of my life.
My favorite arcade, I think, was next to a Montgomery Ward's. It was an old electronics store where you'd go get like sound cards in a crappy broken down strip mall. You would hitch a ride with like one of your older brother's friends, right? Food that comes to mind, you'd have it tucked away in your back pocket before you got to the arcade, was like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle pies. And it was so tiny and so loud. All the noise bounced off the walls. So as soon as you entered the strip mall, you could hear the sound pouring down from the arcade. And you'd roll in, there'd be lines in front of the MK machines and, you know, Street Fighter and some of the other machines, with your turtle pie in your back pocket, your skateboard in your hand, and a crystal clear Pepsi in your hand. You'd walk up and you'd queue in line. You'd, you know, put your quarter down on the arcade machine, wait your turn, get your butt kicked, and then get right back in line. And the noise was one of my favorite parts. I love that. Just how many people are there. You look around, a bunch of teenagers screwing off in the mall on their Saturday. The sound of the arcade machines. It was just an amazing time.
I spent a lot of time in arcades when we would go on vacation. My parents would go gamble and I would go sit in the arcade. And I remember thinking, like, wouldn't it be great to have one of these at home? It would be just amazing. And then, you know, I played a bunch of games, a whole bunch of Soul Calibur. And then we left because, you know, vacations don't last forever. And I remember going to my uncle's house, and my dad said, you should really go check out his basement. He's got something down there that I think you'll enjoy. And I remember walking down and hearing that, like, arcade sound, the bells and whistles and the noises. And I walked down, and there was a Frogger cabinet. And that's all I did the whole time we were there. We were there for like 4 hours. I didn't get up from that cabinet. I stood there. I just sat and played Frogger until my eyes bled. And when I finished, I got to put my name on that high score sheet. And yeah, there's just something about it. I can't explain how happy arcades made me when I was a kid and how immensely sad I was when they started disappearing. It was just an amazing time, and I will miss it dearly forever.
And just like that, throughout the 90s, it was kind of over in a flash. Once you kind of hit the big 2000s boom, arcades started to die off very, very quickly. I think it's a really important thing if you're a young gamer to experience where games came from, and that includes classic gaming like Nintendos and things. And I really think it's important to showcase to kids. If you can, take them to an arcade, let them experience the sounds, the wonder, the smells, the taste of the stale candy behind the counter. You can find these things, though it's not in the shopping malls around the world like it once was. You can find them, and they are absolutely worth the visit, because no matter how old you get, you can still capture that feeling of being a child back in the 90s.